Greg Olson, Director of the New York State Office for the Aging.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Greg Olson, and I'm the Director of the New York State Office for Aging. Really excited about our show today. I'm thrilled to be joined by one of my longtime friends and really a leader in the aging services field. His name is Stuart Kaplan. He is the CEO at Selfhelp Community Services. He holds a deep commitment to the community, participating in many service organizations. Stuart served and was instrumental in helping to craft and provide recommendations for New York State's Master Plan on Aging. He has worked with the Center for Aging Services Technology, otherwise known as CAST, and that's at Leading Age in Washington, D.C. He previously served as president of the statewide housing cabinet on the board of directors of Leading Age New York. He's the past treasurer of the Global Aging Network and chaired UJA Federation of New York's agency's executive network, where he continues to contribute to various programs and committees. Prior to joining Selfhelp, Stuart was executive vice president at St. Mary's Healthcare System for Children, serving children with special healthcare needs and terminal illnesses. In addition to being a great organizational leader, a great human being, and a great friend, Stuart is a really tremendous thought leader, which is why he's joining us today. His new book, Your Aging Advantage, The 7 New Stages of Aging, introduces a new way to understand the stages of life, including the powerful flicker stage, where a person's feel-like age can shift forward or backward. We're going to dive into the insights and talk more about ways that his research is helping to really dismantle the old idea of chronological age and age in general. And, I think that, Stuart, first of all, it's great to have you, but I think you and I think very, very differently about aging than the general public does. And your research in the development of this book to make us think differently, I think, is long overdue. So first of all, good to see you and welcome to the show.
Delighted to be with you, Greg. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's just dive right in. The oldest baby boomers are going to be turning 80 years old this year. Most headlines treat that as a warning sign. I think one of the language things that I cannot stand is the silver tsunami, right? And because language is really important. Nothing ever good but death and destruction has come from a tsunami. So, again, we could laugh about that, but, language really matters. You actually say it's good news. Why is that?
The good news of us all growing older, first, of course, medicine, technology, health, exercise, nutrition, all of that is helping us to live longer. What we don't think about is that, what does 80 mean? Is 80 actually 80, or is it a different age in our mind chronologically? We no longer really age chronologically because the lifespan has expanded so much. And so, as we will talk about, is 80 really 80? Not sure it is.
And Stuart, we've been told for decades, it's really more than decades. We obviously live in an ageist society, and that aging is something to fight. We have all this anti-aging. It's something to fight, to fix, to fear. Your book flips that completely, which is what I love about it. What made you want to challenge that narrative?
Well, I've learned, I've been in the aging services field for decades at this point, along with my co-author, Marcus Riley, who is also an aging services expert, but in Australia. So we take a very global view of all of this. But the fact that we think about aging as something to fix or that's broken.
I think we're having a little technical difficulty. So let's bear with it for a second. We'll see if we can get Stuart back, because he can talk more about the book than I can, and that's absolutely appropriate.
Are you able to hear me?
There we go.
I think everything's good, Greg. I think we're good.
All right.
All right, let's try that again. So you know what? We live in a tech world, but tech doesn't always work. So, again, I'll ask you the question again. We've been taught for a very, very long time that aging is something to fight, to fix, and even to fear, and many people do. But your book flips that. What made you want to challenge that narrative?
Along with my co-author, Marcus Riley, who is an aging expert in Australia, we take a very global view of it. But we have seen tens of thousands of older adults who do not fear or try to fix aging, and instead live life in a way that today's activities and today's views on life have changed. And so we really believe that there are advantages to growing older, and that we should take advantage of the advantage of aging. So we have flipped it and talked, instead of thinking about aging as a chronological progression, on your first birthday, you're one, on your second birthday, this is what we are taught. But then when we get to age 50, 60, 70, people start to hold back. And yet there is still so much life to live. And so we have turned, instead of thinking about aging, progressing a year at a time, but turned it into stages of aging, which we have control over.
Right. And there they are right there, the 7 stages of aging. It's come to my attention that the tech problems are actually on my side and nobody else's. So sorry about that. Sometimes our connection at the Empire State Plaza isn't as good as it should be. Stu, geez. Can you tell us what the biggest mental mistake people make when they think about getting older?
So a big one is this number called age 65. 65 is a number that has been ingrained in us in society way back in the 1930s, when the Social Security Act was created, and actuaries actually picked that number because at the time lifespans were going up to about 68, 69. And so the actuaries determined that if we create a Social Security fund, it could help people for the next 3, 4, 5 years of life on average. And 65 is the right age for retirement. And as you can see on this chart, that was back in the 1940s. And yet, bringing it forward, we are now living to age 78, 80 on average. Life expectancies at 65 have expanded tremendously. And so that gives us the ability to think about life and years beyond 65. People think about it as 65 we're on a hill and we're heading up towards 60. And you hit 65, the day after you turn 65, you start going downhill. It is not the way we live life. And this book is about how we live life today as compared to the way we have been taught to live.
Yeah, it's amazing. You look at the number of Social Security beneficiaries in 1940, it was a little over 200,000 versus 71 million today. That's crazy. So your book title is Your Aging Advantage. You use the word advantage. What does aging actually give you that the youth cannot give you?
It gives us experience. It gives us family. It gives us friends. It gives us social context. It gives us networks, all of which we should utilize more as we grow older. And again, when we're young, we think about these things. We may see people who we'd like to emulate. We may have mentors, but we should then use those assets that we have acquired. We can talk about finances and aging and the relation, but I use assets in the context of all we have gained as we have progressed through life, and how we could use those, in addition to finances, so that we can live life as we would like to live it. And a phrase that we have adopted in the book is called aging on pace. And that phrase suggests how you live life. As many in the aging field know, there's a phrase called aging in place, which is where we live and that is typically at home. But aging on pace is how we live. And how we live is what this book is about.
Yeah, and I really like that you talked about, what you gain over the course of time. I know you do, I do as well. I talk to a lot of young people at conferences, presentations, people that are in the field, et cetera. And I think, when you're younger, you think of older adults as them, and they're not them, they're us. You just add the number of years. But in addition to all the things you talked about, the resilience that older adults gain through that work experience, life experience, hobbies, better person, hopefully, better father, better spouse, better grandparent, better friend, all of those things that you learn. Is there a moment through your research where people went from, really dreading aging to embracing it?
So that depends on each stage of life, and it depends on each individual. Somebody, I actually was speaking with somebody last week who said, your book is very interesting. I just turned 31. I am really getting nervous about aging because in another 30 years, I just lived 30 years, and now in another 30 years that went by, I'm going to be over 60. And so I'm dreading. So it depends on the individual. And positivity is really an important concept in how we view aging. If you're a glass half empty person, well, then you're going to dread not only aging, but other things. If you're a glass half full person and you think positively, you are going to take a totally different spin on it. And this book tries to help you through tools that we have included having to do with planning about aging, so that you will have a positive view of aging and understand the resources you have and what you have to give back as well.
Yeah, you are so spot on with that. Attitude is so important, as well as purpose. So I appreciate you saying that. If somebody right now is, let's say my age, late 50s, 60, 70, 80, and they feel like their best years are behind them, what's the first thing that you would tell them?
Take a breath. Take a breath. Look back. Again, if you're thinking of it negatively, you're going to have negative thoughts. Take a breath. Look back on all you have accomplished. Look back on the positive things that you have accomplished. Sure, there are negatives along the way. This isn't Pollyannish. This isn't saying that life is always roses. But look at the positive things you've accomplished, whether it's in your work career, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your travel. And think about, the impact that you have had. That's number one. Number two, look at planning. We talk much in the book, and we actually show you how to plan and the questions that can be asked, big questions about whether I want to continue to work, whether I want to continue to live where I'm living, whether or not, my family is where I want it to be presently. Think about and those are big questions, and then vision out about 5 years is what I would say to those individuals, regardless of which decade they are in or which stage they are in. And think about where you would want to be, and then go back to the aging on pace concept, how you want to live, and begin to implement the steps that will take you there.
Yeah, I think you said a word that not many folks actually take seriously, and that is planning. And your book does go into that. And it's not just, we're often talking about planning for long-term care, right? That's usually what folks are talking about. But you go so much further than that. So I want to really underscore and reiterate how important planning is. And your book allows folks to do that at their own pace and think of things that they might not have thought about. So we're talking with my friend Stuart Kaplan of Selfhelp Community Services. We're going to take a short break, but I want to tee this up because it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I just come out of a meeting. I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot, and I had a call with Stuart and Russ. And they talked to me about this great thing that they had built at Selfhelp called the Virtual Senior Center. And I think I only needed to listen for about 10 minutes. And I'm like, this is a fantastic idea. How do we partner? And so, of course, we did. And we started with, I'd say, 19 or so counties that had implemented the Virtual Senior Center. And then how great Selfhelp is, they have since offered it for free for older adults all across the state. And it's exactly what it sounds like. The virtual senior center, bringing the content of those senior centers into people's homes that can no longer get there. Take a look at this.
Since June 2022, the New York State Office for the Aging, NYSOFA, and Selfhelp Community Services Virtual Senior Center, VSC, have partnered to connect older adults across New York State. VSC offers over 400 live programs monthly, including wellness classes, lifelong learning, virtual travel, and technology support, all in a safe, accessible space guided by social workers and trained facilitators. What began as access through select area agencies on aging has now expanded statewide. Today, any New Yorker age 60 and older can access VSC for free, right from their home, and the impact is measurable. Independent evaluation shows 84% of participants report decreased loneliness, 76% feel less depressed, 76% have made new friends. Together, NYSOFA and Selfhelp are keeping older adults connected, engaged, and supported wherever they live. Visit vscm.selfhelp.net to get started.
So Stuart, we thank you and your team for this amazing partnership that we've had. It makes a tremendous difference in the lives of older adults. So again, we're talking with Stuart Kaplan, Selfhelp Community Services, about his new book, Your Aging Advantage, the 7 New Stages of Aging. Let's talk about the flicker stage, a way people can move between feeling younger and older based on health, mindset, social connection, environment. How would you explain the idea to someone hearing this for the first time, which many are?
What I would say to somebody for the first time, Greg, is that when we live life, we have good days and we have bad days. Expand that beyond days into months or years. And as you see, the 7 stages that run from age 25 years old up to 100 plus at the elder stage are periods of life where you have changes going on in your life, whether they are professional, whether they are family, whether you're talking about where you're living, whether you have a health setback or something going on in your personal life that would, sort of bring you down in your mind. So, but when you have those stages, the pluses or the minuses, you can take control and flicker between stages. We often think about if somebody was to ask an individual, how old are you today? And they say, I am 50 years old. And do you feel any different than when you were 49? And the answer typically is no. And then I would ask, if you didn't know the day you were born, how old would you be? And that 50-year-old classically will say something like 30 or 35, 15 years plus or minus less than. Now, we do have people who will say, I feel older. They're in the minority, however. And the flicker stage allows you to move back and forth based on your passions, your desires, and your choices. So if we keep those in mind, do what we're passionate about, make choices that take us in that direction, it will help you to flicker to earlier stages. And so that is what the flicker concept is about, but it's giving people agency and empowerment over the stage of aging they are in, forgetting about the date on your birth certificate.
Well, I love the examples you gave. I often tell, I think a lot of time, I've been asking a question when I go out and talk to people for well over a decade, right? What did you think old was when you were in your 20s? And 90% of the time it's 50. And that's what I thought too. And that's kind of what we're told consciously and subconsciously. I just didn't pull that out of nowhere. But you're right. I didn't have any problem in my 30s or in my 40s, but the night I was 49, I woke up the next morning, I was 50, and guess what? Nothing happened. Right? And when you ask the question, how old do you feel? As I was thinking about that before you actually said the answer, I was thinking 30 as well. So you're spot on. So if I might,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to give, for people who may still be having trouble sort of grasping that, think about the weather. When you turn on the weather station, they say it is, on today, it is 85 degrees, but it feels like 95 with humidity. The reverse happens in the cold weather when it's 0 degrees. And so it's your feels like age that is so important. And that's how we define the feels like age, just like the feels like temperature.
Well, that was my next question. So let's talk about the feels like age as distinct from chronological age.
Yep. So that is the age that, again, that people, behave. And so, again, the book tries to be very accessible, very practical, and one that as you read it, you say, I could identify with this. I understand what this means because that's exactly how I feel. I can't believe they wrote about that my children are moving out, and so I'm feeling, I must be getting older because I'm an empty nester now. Or I have, my hip is bothering me, and so I'm feeling, even though I'm 50 years old, I'm feeling like I'm 65. That just feels like, well, we could take control. In the hip situation, we know that modern medicine can do wonders, and you're back out on the tennis court shortly after the hip. The children are moving out. What are those opportunities? You want to take that trip. You want to go off to Greece. You want to go off camping. Whatever it is you want to do, those are opportunities that you're able to do now because the children are out, and you could still see them. And you talk about how you position your family if that's your focal point. So the feels like age is something we have control of, and I would love for people to live their feels like age.
So for those of you listening, you can tell that Stuart is in New York City based on the quality background noise that we get from time to time. So Stuart, what are some of the most common flicker triggers that you and Marcus discovered through your research, meaning things that can push people towards vitality or things that can bring people, towards decline?
Yeah, well, one that you and I talk about and focus on professionally, Greg, is isolation. That's one that can push somebody into feeling considerably older than they are. And so if you can combat isolation, the virtual senior center is a good example of that. But there are so many other ways, social connection, being part of the community. So isolation is one. Health conditions are a flicker stage, a flicker trigger, of course. And so, but with medicine, technology, caregiving, which again is so important, all of that can help you to move into younger stages or earlier stages of the realm of aging.
Yeah. Stuart, if for families, for caregivers, could be friends, could be neighbors, how can somebody like that help an older loved one, let's say, flicker back, right? After a setback? And you talked about some of those setbacks without sounding dismissive of the challenges that the person might be facing, because we all have challenges that we're facing, but how can families help?
So families, friends, neighbors typically will have a different perspective on the need to flicker back, because the person who is personally impacted, sometimes their perspective is clouded by the impact itself. But you can't do it all in one step. So the person who is the independent individual in that relationship, might say, oh no, let's go out and go to the park and we're going to throw a ball, or go to the park and sit on the bench. But the person who is impacted thinks, my goodness, to go out and go down the steps and go walk across or get on the bus or in the car, break it into small steps. Break it into small steps. Somebody who is feeling like they have been impacted cannot think about such a large leap, which is not a large leap in fact, but to them it is. So the small step is, let's go down to the lobby, or let's go down and sit in the front yard. We don't have to go across town to get to the park. Small steps is a great way to help somebody to regain more of their independence and positivity.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Now, what 2 or 3 things, if you were giving somebody who's older, and I'm going to use a quick chronological age rather than feels like age, who might be 70 or older, that can start doing today to really tap into the aging advantage?
So if they could begin to plan, we talked before about visioning a bit, and again, that may be too big of a step to take. Not everybody can go through the 8 steps of planning that we set out in the book in a short period of time. So think about how you would like to live life. And this goes back to the aging on pace concept. And it works for the individual. It's how would you like to age on pace? And think about a small step you can take of, is it your living situation that is holding you back? Is it your work situation? Is it your family? And there are lots of examples. And then plan to move in that direction. And again, the planning could be in small steps, just as we talked about it before, in terms of physical location. It can, in your mind, break it down into small, accessible steps. And that will help somebody to move and age on pace and use aging as an advantage.
Yeah, excellent. Stuart, one of the things that I really love about you and the book is you talk about wisdom as a resource. One of the things that we talk about is the social and intellectual capital that older adults bring. And what I've seen over my 35 years of working with older adults is how younger people, based on how they look, will not even try to get to know somebody and will dismiss these amazing, again, work experiences, life experiences. And that's why I love sitting and talking to people because of these types of experience. How do you convert, especially in the culture that we live in, life experiences, et cetera, into something useful?
There are many intergenerational programs. People recognize the benefit in both directions for the older adult as well as for the younger adult, working with intergenerational programs. I mean, in the service sector, which I am and you are, we certainly see that and understand its value. I think that is one significant way that we could do that. But again, even a peer-to-peer, one who has more positivity and is already doing something with those assets that they have acquired along the way, speaking. So speak with somebody who you see is different than you. I mean, diversity is such a powerful way to grow and expand your view of the world. And so somebody who you might know, you might respect, but is still out on the tennis court at 70 years old or 80 years old. And Greg, you know it as well as I. Those people exist. And yet there's somebody else back home. Oh, I couldn't pick up a tennis. I couldn't. Oh, we're not asking you to play tennis. Come sit and watch me play. Or look at this tennis ball. Do you know how they make the tennis ball? Let's talk about that. There are so many ways. So again, this comes back to experiencing people who are viewing aging as a positive aspect and stage of their life.
Yeah, and you are spot on. So I bring my dog every day. I have a park really close to my house with tennis courts and pickleball. And it's always 80% older adults that are there. younger folks as well, but walking on the rail trail throughout the neighborhood, et cetera, they absolutely exist. Let me ask you a quick question about baby boomers, right? Because they have literally changed every facet of society. So 2 questions. Do you think that they can redefine what it's like to be 80 or older? And does the mindset of growing up as a baby boomer, thinking you can change the world, does that serve them better as they age?
I think it has served us well. I am a baby boomer, and we were out there trying to change the world. Here I am as one example, and I do believe that again our view of the world, that we were able to change society, that we could change society, and so I think the baby boomer generation certainly could continue on the path that they have been all along. But there are, whether it's Gen X's or Y, others who view aging from their perspective and their perch in this long continuum, and talking about history, that also can impact the way aging is viewed. And I believe it is important that people mix age frames, because the perspectives on aging will be different. The baby boomers have theirs, Gen X has theirs, etc. And we all need to talk together so that policy, so that society is taking a different view. We have too many silos, and aging should not be a silo unto itself. It should be part of who we are as a society. And there's something we talk about, a whole of aging approach to whether it's services or behavior in society, that's taking into account the communities we live in, the services we provide, the social security that is out there ahead of us. Let's look at a whole of aging as compared to siloed aspects, however you want to create those silos, but we all know they exist. I would love to take all the silos which go vertical and turn them horizontal, and let us live life, which would then create the stages of aging in that horizontal.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And, just a reminder to anybody out there listening, the alternative to aging is not a good one. Right? It's a normal process, not something that we should fear. So let's talk a little bit about fear. I've seen it, you've seen it, talked a little bit about that earlier on. The fear of becoming irrelevant is absolutely real for some folks, and I see it in everyday life. How would somebody address that?
Yeah, so back to that word I don't like, the retirement. That's where that fear comes in. I have been somebody until I retire. And on the next day, I wake up, who am I? And I think there's a powerful linkage between those two. And we need to de-link those two. When we retire, again, created by actuaries, so let's not focus on it. By the way, back in the day of cowboys, do you ever remember the cowboy retiring? Have you ever watched a Western where they said, oh, grandpa is retiring because he's going to be 60 years old? Yeah. No, he worked on the farm, as did grandma, and that's where they were. They never talked about retiring. So retiring is a relatively modern creation. So we shouldn't have it. And we shouldn't, when we retire, using the word, we retire from a job. We don't retire from life. And so if we get to that point where we stop working at a job, there are so many more opportunities, as we know today, whether it's from a working standpoint, from a technology standpoint, from a travel standpoint, from a family standpoint, from a grandparenting standpoint, from a caregiver standpoint. There are so many opportunities that we have. A mentor standpoint, my list could go on. But there are so many opportunities, but we have to see them as a positive step and not as I have retired or I'm getting older, so now I get to sit on. I've reached the time where now I could rest. No, resting is something from the past. And going back to the 1800s again, that is something that nobody even considered. There was never time for rest. You just worked until you couldn't anymore.
Yeah, I think the points you make there are really, really important. I mean, you go to any dinner party or what have you, the first question people always ask is, what do you do, right? We've put so much in this culture that a person's value is the jobs that they have. And to your point, that's not the case at all. And I think, for others, another way to be extraordinarily valued and relevant are folks that volunteer. We have almost 1 million volunteers in New York, providing 442 million hours of service at an economic value of $13.2 billion. So not only, people on the receiving end of your service in the, over 30,000 not-for-profits around the state, but the benefit to the person who's volunteering is well documented, right? Staying socially engaged, physically active, cognitively active, reduces the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So there's a lot of those benefits. But to your point, there's a lot of ways to continue to be valuable and to interact. And we unfortunately have placed way too much emphasis on the job as a defining feature of who you are. I tell folks all the time, I love my job. I love what I do. But I don't live to work. I work to live. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Stuart, if you could leave viewers with a single sentence, an idea from the book, what would it be?
Live your feels like age. And in order to get there, do what you want to do that brings you passion in life and make choices based on your passions.
I love that. And it reminds me of a letter I got recently from a woman who was at fall or injury risk. And you talk about the feels like age. She went through one of our strength training programs to, build muscle mass back, which you can do at any age. She sent me a picture of herself skydiving at 95. That's her feels like age, right? Living the dream. So let's get to what's really important. Not that this hasn't all been amazing, but where can people find Your Aging Advantage book and connect with your work?
Sure. Online at youragingadvantage.com. Simple enough.
You say that one more time and we'll also put it in the chat.
youragingadvantage.com.
There you go. Thanks, Stu. Stuart, we're going to take another short break. As part of the newly passed state budget, Governor Hochul has tasked me and the New York State Office for Aging working with partners to significantly expand scam and fraud and financial scam awareness through education and a campaign. Consumer Federation of America in March of this year released a report that online scams cost American consumers $119 billion a year. And while anybody can be scammed, so everybody needs to be protected, many folks target the older population, which is why we've been so active and engaged in this. I think the irony is we have implemented a lot of technology to provide solutions in a lot of different areas. And we have two that we've been trying, testing, vetting, measuring to make sure that we can prevent fraud and scams. It's a lot easier to prevent a scam and prevent fraud than to deal with the aftermath. And so two of those, one's called EverSafe, the other's called Silver Shield, are two that we can obviously say that it's something that you can trust and you can look into. So take a look at this.
This video is one in a series offering tips to prevent and recover from scams. Remember that resources are available. These resources have been tested and endorsed by both the New York State Office for the Aging and Lifespan of Greater Rochester, so you know that they are tools you can trust. Find them all at aging.ny.gov/scams. Silver Shield empowers older adults to protect themselves from scams and fraud. Silver Shield immediately reviews suspicious texts, emails, and messages and provides easy-to-understand, personalized guidance on what to do to stay safe. Sign up at silvershield.ai. EverSafe is the first financial wellness tool for older adults and caregivers designed to protect against cyber scams, identity theft, and financial abuse. The system learns your financial behavior and notifies you of any suspicious transactions. Learn more at eversafe.com. Lifespan's Fraud Awareness Network is a peer-to-peer fraud survivors group available to any older adult in New York State. The group meets virtually and is facilitated by Lifespan's fraud prevention team. To join, call Lifespan at 585-244-8400.
And in the next couple of weeks, we will be wrapping up our videos, which really show a lot of the types of scams that older adults are subject to, and how to prevent the scams, but also what to do in the event that you are a victim. So I'm sure once those are complete, we will do a show just on scam and scam prevention. So welcome back, Stuart Kaplan. Let's take some audience questions. But first, before we do that, have to shout out to Beth Stranges, the Office for Aging Director in Chemung County. I do not think there has ever been a Live with Greg that she has not seen. So again, good to see you out there, Beth. And here we go. What's the most surprising thing you learned while writing this book?
Honestly, as a first-time author, I would say the most surprising thing is that writing a book is not as simple as you think it is. There was a lot of information we had, but the process is a process. But the more substantive answer is that as we wrote the book, Marcus and I spoke with many people. And as we talked about some of the concepts like the feels like age and stages of aging, so many people were already living in that manner. And what we did was put the names on it. We sort of gave it some context. We put words around it because people couldn't exactly feel what it meant that when I turned 50, I feel the same as when I was the day before 49. So that was a big surprise. We said, oh, these people are already doing what we're writing about, but it had not been written about. So that was a surprise.
That's great. From Beth Stranges, what inspired you to write about the pace of aging, and what do you hope readers take away from your book?
Great, thank you for that question. So for people in the field, there's a gentleman who's an icon in the field, now gone, but Dr. Robert Butler. He was the first head of the National Institute on Aging. And back in the 1980s, he created the concept of aging in place, along with many other concepts, but aging in place. And we know that as where people want to age, and that is in their homes. Study after study, be it AARP or other researchers, have found that people want to live at home. And so aging in place is perfect. The concept of aging on pace is one about is one about how you live. So aging in place is where you live. I'd like to live at home, even with supports if needed. Aging on pace takes into account, again, communities and your individual desires, passions, and situations. So aging on pace is the larger concept, with aging in place being a component of it. I know that may sound like a tongue twister to some people because the words are getting repeated, but how you live is important, and that's why we wanted to create a concept, aging on pace, for people to understand.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. What do you think is the single biggest obstacle to successful aging?
We've talked much about positivity already, but it's the view that society has given us about aging. Going back to my example earlier of the person who was 31 years old and was fearful about aging 30 years hence, and by the way, 30 years hence, he would still have another 20 years And on that chart we showed from Social Security Administration, it showed that if you hit 65, then you have even more years to live. And so society and the way we talk about aging, whether it's in the Hallmark card store or it's in advertising or in the Social Security Administration itself, it has taught us that aging is something to try to stay away from. And I think that is our biggest problem. If we could break through that and get people to see what we've talked about today, the positivity, the opportunities, the volunteering, the camping, the climbing the mountain, those are all things we could do, and we have control of it. We have control.
Yeah, thank you. What do you say to someone who's caring for an aging parent and watching them struggle?
Yeah, that's a tough one because emotions are our most powerful dictator of how we behave. And what I would say is two things. One is talk to others who are going through the same situation. You're not alone. You are not the only person. We have a nation and world that is going through that. So talk with others and draw from their strengths and experiences. But the second is there are experts in aging and how to access services. New York State is rich in services for the aging population. The problem is that when somebody needs those services, it typically comes at a crisis point. And so the caregiver is at a crisis, and all of a sudden you're dialing, you're calling, you're trying to figure out what to do. But there are experts. If you need to prepare a legal document, you call it an attorney. Yes, you can go online and get something, but you would more likely call an attorney. If you need to invest your money, again, you could do this on your own, but most people will call somebody who is an expert and say, help me with these investments. Why is it that when it comes to caregiving, we think the caregiver thinks they can take this on by themselves? And so turn to experts. There are social workers, there are nurses, there are geriatricians, there are a field called geriatric care managers that can be tapped into, who are expert in helping families and the client or the person who needs the care to access the services that are needed. I would implore you to look into experts who know this field well. Don't try to do it on your own.
Yep, and there's also organizations like Selfhelp Community Services. And in New York, there are 59 county offices for the aging. That should be your number one phone call to learn about that. I saw one of the comments. It said, at any age is the right age to make a 5-year plan. And that's true for older adults. It's true for caregivers. So anybody that is, family, friend, or neighbor caring for somebody else, we have a lot of resources, as Stuart talked about, in New York State. But on our website, aging.ny.gov, we have 2 free resources for any caregiver of any age in New York. And there are 4.1 million people who are providing uncompensated care to somebody else. First is the New York Caregiver Portal, which is powered by Trualta. The other is the Caregiver Intensity Index, which can, within 2 minutes and based on evidence-based questions, tell you where you are in your caregiving journey. Are you struggling? What types of resources we can connect you to? So to Stuart's point, there is a lot in New York. We are way ahead of a lot of other states in terms of what we're able to offer, not only as government, but as not-for-profits like Stuart. So unfortunately, we are out of time. This has been a fantastic conversation. Stuart, I want to first thank you for your partnership, your friendship over all of these years, to me personally, to the State Office for Aging, your commitment to the work that you do now statewide with the VSC, but also what you guys have been doing in New York City for, really decades and decades. And finally, I want to thank you for this amazing book. It's about time that we have more and more people start to talk about aging differently. And you certainly have done that, as well as, thanking your co-author, Marcus Riley. So again, your aging advantage, the 7 new stages of aging by Stuart Kaplan and Marcus Riley. Check it out somewhere. We'll be coming back in July. Thank you all for joining us today, as always, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Live with Greg is a production of the New York State Office for the Aging Communications Bureau. Please join us next time.